Welcome to Alchemy Arts Radio. I'm Jordan Grace.
And I'm Krystal Wilde. Okay, so I want you to close your eyes for a second. Well, unless you're driving, obviously.
Right. Definitely keep your eyes on the road if you're driving.
Yeah, safety first. But if you can, just picture a room. And I don't mean just a room with the lights flipped off. I mean a space that is bathed in this absolute, just heavy darkness.
Like that pre-industrial dark.
Exactly. That thick dark that almost feels heavy against your skin. So in the absolute center of this space, sitting on a weathered wooden trivet, there is a heavy, antique brass bowl.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And right next to it, anchored really tightly in this dark silver holder, is a solitary blood red candle. Now imagine the sudden, really sharp sound of a match striking in that quiet.
Oh, wow. That changes the whole vibe immediately.
It really does. The wick catches, right? And this small, almost violent, flickering flame pushes back the shadows. It throws these incredible, deep gold and amber tones all across the walls of this space.
Setting the scene perfectly.
And in that sudden illumination, you can see these drifting dust motes. They suddenly look like, I don't know, suspended stars floating in the candlelight.
That is a gorgeous image.
So now imagine a hand reaching into the frame, holding a vintage 19th century cabinet card. You know the ones, those stiff, heavy, sepia-tone photographs?
Oh yeah, the really thick cardboard ones?
Right. And on it is an image of a woman in an elegant, rigidly structured Victorian dress. She's standing perfectly still before this painted backdrop of ancient stone columns.
Very classic setup for that era.
Totally. So the hand slowly lowers the corner of that photograph until it touches the candle's flame.
Wait, they're burning it.
Yeah. It catches fire immediately. The image of the woman curls, it blisters, and it just dissolves into smoke. It falls into the brass bowl below as this fragile husk of shimmering, weightless ash.
It is an incredibly haunting visual, isn't it?
It really is.
It feels almost, I don't know, transgressive, like we're watching the literal destruction of a memory.
Yeah, that's exactly how it feels to me too. It feels wrong somehow.
Right, but to the man holding that photograph in the dark, this isn't an act of destruction at all.
Really? How else could you see burning a vintage photo?
Well, to him, it is an act of profound cosmic liberation. What you are witnessing in that exact moment is a demonstration of the fundamental truth of the universe, which is that energy cannot be created or destroyed.
It just changes states, right? Physics 101.
Exactly, it merely changes states. Think about the literal, undeniable physics of that moment. Over 100 years ago, sunlight radiated from the surface of our sun.
Okay.
It traveled for 8 agonizing minutes across the freezing, empty vacuum of space. It penetrated our atmosphere, and it struck that specific woman.
Wow, when you break it down like that, it's intense.
It is. It reflected off the dense fabric of her elegant dress, past the precision glass of a camera lens, and physically altered the microscopic silver halides on a glass plate.
So the light actually changed the chemistry of the plate.
Yes. That light, that exact specific energy from a century ago, was literally chemically trapped in the physical object of the photograph. It was frozen in time.
That is wild to think about.
So by setting it on fire, the energy is finally being released. It is being transmuted back into heat and light, returning out into the universe back to its primordial divine source.
That reframing immediately sends chills down my arms. I mean, we are not just looking at a piece of paper burning.
Not at all.
We are looking at a century-old photon prison being broken open.
A photon prison. I love that. That's a great way to put it.
And that is exactly the kind of paradigm shift we are getting into today. Because we are not just summarizing a fascinating book in this deep dive.
No, we are doing much more than that.
We are essentially cracking the seal on a hidden archive. We are pulling back a very heavy, very velvet curtain on a world most of us have absolutely no idea exists.
It really is a hidden world.
Today, our deep dive is immersing us in a truly acclaimed and honestly somewhat mysterious text. It's called A Feather on the Breath of Ra, Conversations with an Alchemist on Photography, Light, and Magic.
Quite the title.
It is. And this was written by the avant-garde photographer Garin Horner. And the book is essentially the documentation of Horner's incredible 6-year journey.
6 years is a long time to dedicate to one subject.
Right. For over half a decade, he interviewed and learned from a man named George Kingswood.
Or GK, as he prefers to be addressed throughout their correspondence.
Yeah, he just goes by GK.
And GK is not just a master photographer. He identifies, quite seriously, as a fourth-generation modern alchemist.
Which is just a wild concept in the 21st century.
It really is. His family lineage has spent the last century and a half operating in the shadows. They've been secretly weaving together ancient Egyptian magic, Hermetic philosophy, and the technological science of photography.
So they saw the camera and thought, oh, this is magical.
Exactly. For GK, and for his ancestors before him, the invention of the camera in the 1800s was not just a cool scientific milestone or, a neat parlor trick.
Right.
It was a shattering spiritual revelation.
Yeah.
It was the ultimate magical tool they had been waiting centuries for.
And our entire mission today is to take you, the listener, by the hand and guide you through this hidden landscape.
We really want you to see the world exactly the way GK sees it.
Yeah, we are going to explore a reality where photography has absolutely nothing to do with pointing a consumer machine at a sunset and clicking a button to capture data on a hard drive.
No, it is so far beyond that.
We are going to examine photography as a profound, tactile ritual of spiritual transformation. We're talking about the manipulation of time, the hidden properties of light, and the actual, literal chemistry of the human soul.
It's heavy stuff, but it's brilliant.
It really is. But to even begin to understand the magic, we first have to understand the man who views it as a sacred duty and the physical spaces where this transformation occurs.
Yeah, it really is a sacerdotal art for him.
Sacerdotal.
Sacerdotal meaning a priestly, profoundly sacred duty.
Ah, got it.
And the story of how Garin Horner even discovered GK is a fascinating mystery in and of itself. Horner was working on a photographic project documenting people's personal spiritual altars, the private spaces where people pray or meditate.
Right.
A fellow photographer suggested he reach out to a man named George Kingswood, describing him offhandedly as a modern-day alchemist who had a truly remarkable setup.
But it wasn't that easy to find him, was it?
Not at all. When Horner tried to look him up, the trail went instantly cold. The only public record he could find was a tombstone in a cemetery for a George Kingswood who lived from 1825 to 1851.
Which is the perfect cinematic inciting incident.
Right.
You go looking for a living artist and all you find is a ghost from the Victorian era.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Horner doesn't give up. He eventually gets a P.O. box address from his contact, sends a formal physical letter, and they begin this incredibly slow, methodical correspondence.
Just letters back and forth.
Yeah, very old school. And Horner admits right in the text that he went into this with a massive preconceived notion of what an alchemist actually is.
Because, let's be honest, when we hear that word, we all picture the exact same thing.
Oh, for sure.
We picture a fantasy cosplayer vibe, some eccentric, unwashed guy in a smoky, subterranean stone lab surrounded by bubbling glass beakers.
Obsessively trying to turn literal lumps of lead into literal bars of gold so he can get rich and pay off his debts.
Exactly. That's the trope.
Which is the classic exoteric misunderstanding of alchemy.
Exoteric meaning the outward common view.
Right. It's what historians sometimes call puffery. The work of the sooty empirics who entirely missed the point of the philosophy.
So they were just literalists.
Yeah, they took it way too literally. GK immediately corrected Horner's assumptions. He clarified that he is not driven by vulgar greed or material wealth.
Okay, so what is he driven by?
The Kingswood lineage is entirely focused on the opus magna lucis et umbrae. That translates to the great work of light and shadow.
The great work of light and shadow. That sounds incredible.
In the true esoteric context of Hermeticism, alchemy has absolutely nothing to do with literal metallurgy.
Okay.
It is about inner transmutation. It's a psychological and spiritual evolution of the practitioner themselves.
Right, so the metals are just metaphors.
Precisely, the base human condition. It's our fears, our fragile egos, our addictions, our selfish instincts, our mortality.
The heavy stuff that weighs us down.
Exactly. It's the heavy, unrefined state of being human. The gold is a state of divine perfection, an enlightened, purified soul that is reconnected with the divine source.
Okay, I track that.
And for GK, the specific tactical path to turning that human light into spiritual gold is through a process he calls photognosis.
Photognosis. Becoming light's divine wisdom. It's such a beautiful, heavy term.
It really is.
And this pursuit, this photognosis, isn't just something he thinks about while taking a walk in the park. It requires a dedicated physical space to anchor the spiritual work.
You need an actual physical location to ground it.
Right, you need a staging ground for the sacred. Which brings us to the concept of the altar itself.
Yes, the altars.
In Horner's book, altars are described not just as, like, nice tables with candles on them, but as site-specific portals.
Portals is a great word for it.
They are active focal points where the tangible material world and the intangible spiritual world bleed into one another. And the descriptions of GK's altars, because he has several of them throughout his home, they are visually staggering.
They really are deeply layered, highly intentional tableaus. Horner paints this picture of a room where the walls are painted a deep, absorbing matte color.
Just sucking all the light in.
Exactly. The altar itself is crowded with hundreds of flickering candles, casting these long, dramatic, dancing shadows across the ceiling.
It sounds so cinematic.
There are actual human skulls resting quietly next to antique, large-format wooden cameras with brass lenses.
Wow.
You have stone statues of Egyptian deities standing shoulder to shoulder with fresh offerings of fruit, burning frankincense, and specific alchemical tools like ceramic crucibles and glass alembics.
Okay, so a very traditional, ancient-looking, magical setup.
But then, right in the dead center of all this ancient, heavy mysticism, you'll see a pristine stack of bright yellow Kodak film boxes, or sleek packages of Ilford and Kentmere photo paper. The moment you look at the actual history of how photography was invented.
Okay, lay it on me.
What's fascinating here is that photography didn't just emerge from a vacuum of modern engineering. It was quite literally born from the womb of alchemy.
Really? How so?
Look at the materials that made early photography possible in the 1830s and 40s.
Like the daguerreotypes and stuff.
Exactly. The daguerreotype, the calotype. They relied entirely on silver, mercury, copper, and gold.
Wait, really? Gold and mercury?
Yes. These are the exact, specific foundational elements that alchemists have been obsessively studying, combining, and manipulating for thousands of years.
So you're saying the inventors of photography were basically standing on the shoulders of medieval alchemists?
More than that, the chemical processes, the reactions of these metals to different compounds, that knowledge was already written down in ancient alchemical texts long before the camera was invented.
That is wild.
The early pioneers of photography, like Niepce and Daguerre, were essentially applying centuries of alchemical research toward a new goal, which was fixing an image cast by light.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
GK argues passionately that photography is not a departure from alchemy. It is not a modern replacement. It is its highest, most profound modern evolution.
The ultimate form.
Yes. It is the natural continuation of what the ancients called the arts of fire. When GK puts a box of film on that altar, he isn't placing a consumer product there.
Right.
He's placing a highly refined box, potential silver and light. He is placing the ultimate alchemical substrate right next to the crucible.
That completely reframes how you look at a camera, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just a piece of consumer electronics you buy at a big box store.
Not at all.
It's a precision alchemical tool. But if we accept that photography is the modern crucible of alchemy, the next logical question is, what is the fire that actually fuels this crucible?
That's the big question.
Because in traditional alchemy, you need literal fire to melt the lead. But in photography, the fire is completely different. The answer, of course, is light.
Yes. Light with a capital L.
But if we are going to understand GK's worldview, we have to completely abandon the definition of light we learned in high school physics.
Yeah, we have to look past the wave-particle duality in the electromagnetic spectrum. In the Kingswood philosophy, and in the broader Hermetic tradition, there is a fundamental belief in the dual nature of light.
Okay, tell me about the dual nature.
So, there is the measurable physical light, the photons that bounce off objects, the light that scientists can measure with a light meter.
The light that actually physically exposes the silver halides on the strip of film?
Exactly. But that is only the outer shell. Hidden within that measurable light is a second, infinitely more powerful force.
And what is that?
This is called Empyrean light. Some texts call it the lumen naturae, or the astral light.
The Empyrean light.
It is an undetectable celestial force that radiates through the entire cosmos. It is the active, vivifying essence of life itself. It is the divine consciousness traveling on the back of a photon.
Okay, let me see if I can translate this into a metaphor, because it's a really tough concept to hold in your head.
Very abstract, yeah.
It's like, think about a beautifully written poem printed in a book. There is the physical ink on the page, right?
Yeah. Right.
You can measure the chemical composition of that ink. You can weigh it. You can look at the shape of the letters. That is the physical light.
I'm with you.
But the meaning of the poem, the emotion it evokes, the truth it conveys, the way it can literally change your perspective on life, that is invisible. You can't put the meaning under a microscope.
No, you can't measure meaning in a lab.
Exactly. That meaning is the Empyrean light. The physical ink is just the vehicle carrying the profound truth into your mind.
That is a phenomenal analogy, honestly, that perfectly captures it. The physical light carries the Empyrean light into our reality.
And in this specific esoteric tradition, that Empyrean light isn't just an abstract concept, right?
No, it has a name and it has a face. It is Ra, the ancient Egyptian sun god.
Yeah.
Yes. For GK and for the secret society his family belonged to, which Horner reveals is called the Kemetic Order of the Silver Sun. But for them, Ra is not a mythological character in a history book. Ra is the literal beating heart of the sun. He's the ultimate author of all things, the supreme luminary, the active principle of existence.
And the way they view Ra's interaction with the world completely subverts how we normally think about daytime and nighttime.
It totally flips it.
Because in standard Egyptian cosmology, Ra sails his solar boat across the sky during the day, bringing light, and then descends into the underworld at night. But GK's lineage holds a deeply mystical concept known as the midnight sun.
The midnight sun is a breathtaking philosophical concept.
It really is. Explain how that works.
The idea is that when Ra sails his solar bark, his cosmic boat, down into the Duat, the dark underworld during our earthly night, his divine light does not diminish.
He doesn't turn off.
No, he is still radiating absolute perfect Empyrean light. And for the true mystic, the practitioner who has refined their soul, that spiritual sun shines just as brightly in the pitch black of midnight as it does at high noon.
Because the physical darkness doesn't matter to him.
Exactly. Because material earth, rocks, and dirt cannot block divine radiations. The Empyrean light penetrates everything.
Okay, but if this Empyrean light, this divine radiation of Ra, is so powerful, so absolute, how do we interact with it?
That's the dangerous part.
Yeah, because if it's the pure energy of the divine, shouldn't it completely overwhelm us? I mean, shouldn't we just be vaporized?
It absolutely would overwhelm us. And the text addresses this directly by quoting the Sufi scholar and mystic Abd el-Qadir.
What'd he say?
He wrote that if you attempt to look directly at the divine light without a veil, you burn.
You burn. Wow.
The sheer unadulterated reality of the divine is too powerful, too structurally pure for the uninitiated fragile human soul to withstand. It would obliterate the ego instantly.
So we need protection.
You need a medium. You need a veil to step down the voltage, so to speak.
Which is exactly what the mechanics of a camera do. Think about what happens if you open the aperture of a lens too wide or if you leave the shutter open for too long.
The image flows out.
The film literally burns. It completely overexposes into stark, blinding, featureless white. The image is utterly destroyed by too much light. The information is wiped out by the sheer volume of the radiation.
Precisely. In GK's practice, photographs act as the necessary veils. They capture and translate the overwhelming divine radiations of Ra into a finite, two-dimensional form that we can safely observe and study.
So the photo is like a welding mask for the soul.
That's exactly it.
Oh.
When GK looks at a finished photograph, he isn't just looking at the pleasing aesthetics of a landscape or the smile on a portrait subject.
He's looking deeper.
He is reading the divine signature of the universe. He's looking at how the Empyrean light interacted with the physical world in a fraction of a second.
And the journey the photographer takes to create that image mirrors Ra's journey. Just as Ra has to plunge into the terrifying dark duat of the underworld to be reborn at dawn, the photographer must gather their exposed film and plunge into the pitch-black darkness of the darkroom to bring the image to light.
It's a parallel journey.
Which brings us out of the celestial heavens and down into the deeply tactical, chemical reality of the darkroom, the space where the chemistry of the soul actually takes place.
The darkroom is the ultimate alchemical laboratory.
Yeah.
And everything that happens in that room is governed by a single core alchemical axiom.
Dissolve and coagulate.
Yes.
I feel like we need to spend some serious time on this. It is the absolute engine of this entire philosophy.
It is the heartbeat of all alchemical thought, breaking down a physical substance to its absolute base elements, dissolving it, stripping away its impurities, and then reforming it, coagulating it into something higher, something more perfect.
Taking it apart to put it back together better.
Exactly. In spiritual terms, it means brutally breaking down your own ego, enduring a metaphorical death of the self, and being reborn as a purified, enlightened being. And what GK points out so beautifully is that in analog photography, this is exactly, literally what happens to silver.
Silver is the star of the show here. We really cannot overstate how important silver is to this lineage.
It's everything.
In alchemy, silver is the metal of the moon. It is the receptive feminine counterpart to the active masculine gold of the sun. And Horner's book notes this incredibly poetic detail from alchemical lore. It says, silver is the only metal whose rays are said to shine inward.
Shine inward.
Yeah, it holds its energy inside itself. It sits perfectly in the absolute darkness of the camera, coated onto the film, completely latent. It is just waiting in the void to be awakened by what GK calls the ecstatic landing points of light.
The ecstatic landing points in light. What a phrase.
The sunlight, the gold of Ra, marries the silver of the moon to create the foundation of the image.
It is the ultimate cosmic union of opposites, the active and the receptive. And GK takes this a step further by mapping the traditional 4 stages of Jungian internal alchemy directly onto the chemical process of developing a photograph.
Okay, Carl Jung. He famously studied alchemy, right?
Yes, famously. But Carl Jung studied alchemy not as early chemistry, but as a map of the human psyche's integration.
He saw it as psychology.
Exactly. The first stage is nigredo, the blackening, the descent into chaos or catharsis. In photography, GK equates this to creative awareness. It's the terrifying plunge into the dark, chaotic potential of the world, loading the film into the pitch-black camera box.
You're entering the void.
The second stage is albedo, the whitening or the illumination. This corresponds to the photographic state of latency.
Latency is such a fascinating scientific reality. When you take a picture on film, the light hits the silver halides and knocks an electron free, right?
Yes, on a microscopic level.
And that electron wanders until it gets trapped, creating a microscopic, invisible speck of metallic silver. The image is there, physically encoded on the film, but you absolutely cannot see it. It is entirely hidden. It has been illuminated, but not yet revealed.
Exactly. The potential is locked in. Then comes the third stage, citronitis, the yellowing, which in psychological terms is the dawning of solar consciousness or education.
Okay, how does that map to the darkroom?
In the darkroom, this is the magical moment of revelation. This is when you submerge the film or paper into the developer solution, and the chemicals use those tiny, invisible specks as anchors to reduce the surrounding silver.
That's when the magic happens.
The image slowly, seemingly by magic, ghosts into view in the chemical bath. It rises up out of nothingness.
That feeling never gets old, seeing an image appear in the tray.
It's pure magic. And finally, the fourth stage is rubido, the reddening, the ultimate transformation. In the darkroom, this is fixation. You move the image into the fixer bath, stripping away all the unexposed silver, halting the chemical reaction, and making the image permanent.
So you lock it in.
Yes. It can now be brought out into the blinding daylight as a finished, tangible thing without being destroyed.
The psychological transformation of the artist happens in perfect tandem with the chemical transformation of the silver. It's a synchronized dance. And this totally elevates the darkroom from being just a smelly workspace into a genuinely sacred sanctuary.
It is a temple.
Let's talk about the sensory experience of a traditional darkroom, because it is inherently otherworldly. I want you to imagine stepping through a revolving light trap door.
It's like stepping into another dimension.
Suddenly, you are cut off from the entire modern world. You are bathed in this eerie, monochromatic, blood-red glow of the safe light. The air is immediately thick with the sharp, almost metallic, acidic smell of the developable on the fixer.
The smells are so distinct.
And the only sound is the rhythmic, constant sloshing of water running in the wash tray. You are totally isolated and you completely lose your sense of time. Hours can pass and it feels like 20 minutes.
GK connects that specific atmosphere directly to our collective unconscious. He argues that the darkroom triggers something ancient in our DNA. It mimics the Paleolithic caves of our ancestors.
Like Lascaux or Chauvet.
Exactly. Think about early humans going deep, deep into the earth, crawling through suffocating darkness, far away from the sun, to think massive, dynamic images of animals on the cave walls using soot and animal fat by the flickering light of a fire.
They were going into the dark to make art.
They weren't just decorating their living rooms, though. They were performing hunting magic. They were trying to capture the spiritual essence of the animals. GK believes the modern alchemist uses the darkroom in the exact same way, descending into the dark to capture the profound essence of light.
That is a brilliant connection. It reminds me of Plato's cave, too, the idea of sitting in the dark, watching shadows play on the wall, trying to discern the ultimate reality behind them.
Yes, a very similar philosophical space.
When the silver coagulates and that image finally materializes in the developing tray, what have they actually achieved?
What is the final product?
Yeah. Are they just making a really beautiful, intentional piece of art? Or in their specific belief system, is something literal, something energetically real actually being trapped in that physical tray?
In the Kingswood belief system, it is an act of trapping a ghost.
A ghost.
The photograph is not just a representation of a moment. It is an energetic emanation of that moment. Horner quotes the famous philosopher Roland Barthes in the text, who argued that a photograph is literally a radiation from a real body.
It isn't a drawing.
No. The light physically bounced off the subject, traveled through space, and physically touched the film. It is a direct, unbroken, tactile connection.
That's profound.
Therefore, the developed photograph becomes a tangible talisman. It is a physical record, an energetic anchor point of the exact intersection between the material world and the immaterial divine world.
Okay, every photograph is a captured ghost. That is a heavy concept to walk around with. But before the darkroom can develop that ghost, the image must be caught in the first place. The ghost has to be trapped. So let's zoom out and look at the instrument itself. Let's look at the camera.
The ultimate tool.
Because in this tradition, as you might have guessed by now, the camera is not just a mechanical box with some glass on the front. The camera is a temple.
It is the sacred architecture of the great work. GK describes the internal space of the camera, the physical camera obscura, the dark chamber, as the adytum of Ra.
The adytum?
In ancient temple architecture, the adytum is the innermost, holiest sanctum. It's the room where only the high priests are allowed to enter, the room where the god actually resides.
It's a holy of holies.
Exactly. Inside a camera, that empty space is a zone of perfect, pre-cosmological blackness. It is the void from which all creation springs. Every time you load a fresh roll of film into a camera and snap the back shut, sealing out the light, you are physically recreating the primordial darkness of the universe right there in your hands.
And GK goes into incredible obsessive detail about the physical shape of the camera itself. He primarily uses a 35mm SLR camera, which is structurally a hexahedron, a six-sided box.
Then he breaks this down geometrically.
He does. The 4 points of the camera's base represent the 4 classical elements of alchemy: earth, air, fire, and water. And the camera relies on every single one of them to function.
Walk me through the elements.
Earth is represented by the rare metals, the brass, the silver, and the ground silica glass making up the body and the lens. Water is represented by the fluid chemical baths waiting in the dark room and the moisture of the environment. Air is the empty space inside the chamber and the literal breath of intention the photographer takes before pressing the shutter. And fire, of course, is the Empyrean light burning the image onto the silver.
The camera is a microcosm of the entire world. But perhaps the most striking architectural metaphor GK presents is his view of the viewfinder.
Oh, this part is amazing.
If you picture a classic SLR camera, like a vintage Nikon or Canon, the top part that houses the viewfinder, the part that bulges out above the lens, is a pentaprism.
Right, that triangular bump on top.
Geometrically, it is shaped exactly like a pyramid. GK calls this piece of glass the pyramidion, the ultimate shining capstone of the Great Pyramid. And when you press your eye to that viewfinder, looking through the glass, especially if the focusing screen has crosshairs etched in the center, you are symbolically stepping into the Rastau.
Let's explain the Rastau, because this blew my mind. The Rastau are the hidden, narrow inner hallways of the ancient Egyptian pyramids. So, metaphorically, when you lift the camera to your face, you're standing in the pitch-black center of the Great Pyramid, looking outward through the translucent capstone.
Looking out at the world.
And when you frame a subject in those crosshairs, you are making a profound divine choice. You are looking at the infinite, chaotic, swirling reality of the world, drawing a box around one specific fraction of it and saying, this is what I choose to bring into permanent existence. GK even has a specific Latin phrase permanently engraved on the body of his Hasselblad camera to remind him of this power. Ego video esse. I see it into being.
I see it into being. That phrase perfectly encapsulates the alchemical mindset. It places the ultimate creative power squarely in the hands and the eyes of the observer. The universe only manifests when consciousness observes it.
It's very quantum physics when you say it like that.
Yep, it is. And Horner details how the Kemetic order of the Silver Sun took this concept of the camera as temple to its absolute literal extreme back in the 1800s. As part of their secret initiation rituals, the order constructed a massive, room-sized camera obscura.
Stop and picture this, a camera the size of a master bedroom.
Yes, and up to 9 initiates could physically step inside it at once. They would seal the door, standing in total darkness. Then, a tiny aperture would be opened, projecting the inverted, moving image of the outside world across the walls and the bodies of the initiates standing inside.
That would be incredibly disorienting.
They treated the interior of this giant camera as a holy sanctuary. They would perform complex rituals, meditate, and undergo intense spiritual rebirth while physically standing inside the actual mechanics of vision. The outside world was projected onto them upside down, forcing them to completely reevaluate their relationship to reality.
It's basically a sensory deprivation tank crossed with a mystical cinema. I want you, listening right now, to really internalize this perspective. I want you to feel the weight of this idea. Every single time you pick up a camera, even if it's just a beat-up old film camera you found at a thrift store for $10, you aren't just holding a mechanical device with springs and gears.
You are holding a miniature, mathematically perfect temple of light.
You are holding a portable, sacred space where the universe can be caught, paused, and recreated.
And this naturally brings us to the ultimate application of all these incredible tools. We've built the temple. We've caught the Empyrean light. We've taken the silver through the grueling chemical process. We have the finished photograph.
We have the ghost.
We have the ghost. Now, what does a modern alchemist actually do with these powerful artifacts? Do they just put them in a frame on the wall? No. This is where the practice moves from passive philosophical observation into active intentional magic.
Exactly. Because to GK, photographs are not static pieces of paper. They are active portals. The book classifies them into 3 distinct categories: mirrors, windows, and doorways.
Mirrors, windows, doorways.
They are mirrors reflecting our own hidden psychology back at us. They are windows allowing us to look deep into the divine structural nature of the universe. And most importantly, they are doorways through which actual energetic forces can travel.
One of the most fascinating magical practices outlined in Horner's book is something GK calls photopsychometry.
Oh, this is the psychic reading part.
Yes, this is the clairvoyant practice of holding a physical photograph and receiving supernatural, non-local information about the subject in the image, their hidden past, their current emotional state, or even their future trajectory. And the remarkable thing is, the alchemist doesn't even necessarily need to look at the image with their eyes.
Wait, they don't even have to look at it.
By simply placing their hand on the photograph, touching the metallic silver suspended in the gelatin emulsion, they connect with what GK terms imperial filaments.
Imperial filaments. It sounds like quantum entanglement.
It is essentially a mystical version of quantum entanglement. GK posits that when a photograph is taken, invisible, permanent threads of energy, filaments, are created. They permanently link the physical photograph, the consciousness of the photographer who took it, and the energetic soul of the subject. Distance and time become irrelevant. The filament bypasses linear time.
It's a literal energetic connection across space and time. The light from 1920 is still vibrating in the silver today.
Exactly.
And the Kingswood lineage doesn't stop at just passively reading information from these filaments. They use these photos to actively project energy back down the line. There is a deeply complex ritual practice described in the book called telesmic projection.
Telesmic projection.
Remember those elaborate altars we talked about earlier, the ones with the skulls and the Kodak boxes? GK will take a photograph of a physical offering, let's say a single, beautifully decorated pastry. He places that physical photo of the pastry onto the altar. Then, through intense magical ritual, chanting, and focused mental intention, that image of a single cake is amplified. In the astral realm, it is multiplied infinitely. It becomes an Everest-sized mountain of cakes offered to the gods.
The photograph acts as a cosmic amplifier, a megaphone for spiritual energy.
An Everest of cakes. It's such a surreal image.
It's a brilliant, highly practical application of the core Hermetic principle. As above, so below. The micro represents the macro. The symbol becomes the reality. And historically, GK reveals that his great-grandfather, Abraham Kingswood, used this exact mechanism for incredibly benevolent real-world purposes.
Tell the story about Abraham, because I love this part.
Abraham ran a successful, high-end portrait studio in London in the late 19th century, shooting those stiff, formal cabinet cards we talked about at the beginning. He would chat intimately with his clients while positioning them. He would learn about their private struggles, their dashed hopes, their impending financial ruins, or their hidden physical illnesses.
Like a bartender or a priest in a confessional.
Very much so. And then, after the client left, in the secret, heavily locked back room of his studio, Abraham would use their freshly developed portraits to perform sympathetic magic.
This is where it gets so wild. It's like benevolent voodoo.
Exactly. He would place their portraits on his altar and cast elaborate spells of benevolence, health, and advantage over their images. He would send healing energy down the imperial filaments directly into the lives of his clients.
And they had no idea.
The clients, of course, never knew. They just thought they had their picture taken. But over the next few months, their lives would mysteriously, drastically improve. The illness would fade, the debts would be forgiven. The photograph was the energetic voodoo doll, but it was used entirely for healing and elevation rather than harm.
Okay, I love that story, but I have to hit pause. I have to push back here on behalf of myself and literally everyone listening who has a smartphone in their pocket right now.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
You and GK have spent this entire deep dive emphasizing the critical importance of physical silver. You called it the moon's metal. We talked about the tactile chemistry, the solvent coagula, the physical touching of the emulsion. If I pull out my phone and take a photo of my mom, or my best friend, or my dog, there is no silver.
No, there isn't.
There is a CMOS silicon sensor. There is no chemical dissolution. It's photoelectric. It's a binary code of ones and zeros stored on a microchip. Doesn't the lack of physical chemistry fundamentally break the alchemical chain? You can't just wave away the loss of the physical transmutation. Does digital photography kill the magic and just leave us with dead, empty data?
That is the exact debate Garin Horner brings up to GK, and it is the crux of modern magical theory. It's a vital question. Does the medium dictate the magic?
Right, because if it does, we're all out of luck.
While it is true that the Kingswood lineage and GK himself relies heavily on the physical-chemical process of analog film precisely because of the beautiful alchemical properties of silver, GK does not dismiss digital photography. He leans into a much broader, more fundamental truth. He asserts that all photographic images, whether they are etched onto a glass plate coated in silver nitrate or captured by a silicon sensor derived from the Earth's sand, are ultimately made possible by light.
The light is the constant.
The substrate changes, but the active agent remains the same.
So the photon is still the hero of the story.
Yes. And whether that photon comes from direct sunlight or from an artificial LED light that is mimicking the spectrum of the sun, it is all ultimately an extension of that original Empyrean spark. It is still the lumen naturae interacting with the physical world.
But what about the filaments? How do they attach to a digital file?
GK explains that the imperial filament, that magical thread of quantum entanglement, is actually less about the physical paper or the metallic silver, and much more about the radiation of the subject and the focused intention of the observer.
The intention of the observer.
Yes, the magic is an ancient and everlasting force. It adapts to the tools of the era. A digital sensor is still a window capturing the Empyrean light. It's capturing the exact same photons. If the intention of the photographer is pure, if they are pressing the shutter with the mindset of ego video essay, seeing it into being, the connection remains absolute. Digital doesn't kill the magic. It simply changes the medium of the mirror.
That is incredibly comforting. It means we haven't lost the magic. We've just miniaturized the temple. We're carrying it in our pockets.
We carry the temple with us everywhere we go.
But as we reach the summit of this deep dive, we have to look at the ultimate horizon. We've seen the tools, we've dissected the light, we've explored the darkroom chemistry, and we've uncovered the sympathetic magic. But what is the actual end game for GK? What is the ultimate final goal of the Kingswood lineage? It can't just be about making endless Everest-sized cakes on an astral altar.
No, it is much, much larger than that.
Right.
The ultimate goal of this entire lifelong practice is the great work, the magnum opus.
The magnum opus.
Now, in the traditional art world, a magnum opus is usually a person's single greatest tangible masterpiece, like Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa or Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. You point to it and say, that is my great work.
The one thing you leave behind.
But in alchemy, the great work is not a single tangible object you can hang in a gallery. The great work is the gradual, agonizing, beautiful, relentless ascension and purification of the practitioner's own soul. The masterpiece they are trying to create is their own exalted state of being.
It is about escaping what Hermetic texts call the dark abode of the self. The baseline human condition is heavy. It's bogged down by ego, by greed, by the illusion of separation from the rest of the universe.
That leaden state we talked about earlier.
But by continuously, daily observing the profound, hidden beauty of the world through the lens of a camera, by participating in this endless ritual of capturing light and shadow, the alchemist slowly shatters their own ego. Every time they step into the darkroom, and they are chipping away the excess marble of their own flaws to reveal the divine spark inside. They are ultimately preparing themselves to reunite with the pure, unadulterated divine flame of Ra.
It is a lifelong process of dissolution and coagulation applied directly to the human heart. It's not about becoming a famous photographer. It is about becoming light itself. Every single photograph taken is an invocation, a quiet prayer, a step up the treacherous inner pyramid toward the capstone.
So, what does this all mean for you, the person listening to this right now? I want you to think about the literal thousands of photos sitting on your phone at this very moment, your camera roll. Up until this hour, you've probably treated them as mere data, just organized pixels to be swiped past, briefly liked on social media, and forgotten in a cloud server somewhere. But what if George Kingswood is right? What if every single one of those images is a living, breathing, vibrating signature of divine light?
What if the next time you raise a camera to your eye, or even just hold your phone up to frame a shot of a street lamp in the rain, you realize you aren't just taking a picture. You are looking through the capstone of a pyramid. You are looking down the hallways of the Krystal. You are trapping a radiant, unyielding ray of eternity. And with every deliberate, intentional capture of light, you are slowly, imperceptibly changing the fundamental chemistry of your own soul.
The book we've been discussing, A Feather on the Breath of Ra, is not just a book about a photographer. And this is the final, haunting thought I want to leave you with today. GK believes that the physical book itself, the ideas contained within it, acts as a magical filament. By reading its words, by seeking it out, or even by just listening to this very conversation right now, you have been energetically connected to the Kingswood lineage. The filament has been attached to you. The cosmic invitation has been extended. The heavy door to the dark room is open and waiting. The red candle is lit, and the silver is sitting in the absolute dark, ready to awaken.
The tools are in your hands. It is entirely up to you to let the light in.
I want you to imagine, just for a moment, the sound of the universe pausing. The slow, heavy, mechanical, rhythmic click of a vintage brass camera shutter echoing in a pitch-black stone room, trapping the light, freezing time, and blowing the door wide open to the infinite.